Hello everyone, today we are unraveling the most explosive, decades-long mystery surrounding one of the world's greatest archaeological wonders, the true master of the Terracotta army. For nearly 50 years, millions have stood before these 8,000 life-sized warriors, chariots, and horses, awestruck by their precision scale and silent military discipline. For almost all that time, the world has accepted one unshakable truth. This underground legion was built to guard Huang, the first emperor of China, the man who ended centuries of civil war, unified 6 warring states into a single empire, standardized writing, currency, weight measures, and laid the foundations of Chinese civilization as we know it. But a small, persistent faction of researchers has ignited a firestorm of debate, claiming the Terracotta army was not meant for Huang at all. Instead, they argue, it was commissioned for Queen Dowager Xuan, the formidable Chu-born matriarch who ruled Qin decades before the first emperor was even born. This is not a trivial argument over details, it is a clash over identity, power, and the legacy of ancient China's most transformative dynasty. Today we will strip away myth, pop culture, distortion, and fringe speculation, relying solely on peer-reviewed archaeology, carbon dating, epigraphy, and mainstream historical consensus, to answer the question once and for all: who does the Terracotta army truly belong to? Let us set the stage. In 1974, farmers digging a well in Lintang County, Shanxi Province, stumbled upon pottery fragments that would rewrite global history. What followed was one of the most spectacular excavations ever undertaken: 3 massive underground pits, holding a fully formed imperial army, each warrior with a unique face, hairstyle, armor, and rank, arranged in strict battle formation. The site lies just east of the massive mausoleum of Huang, a complex so grand that Sima Qian, the grand historian of ancient China, wrote that it took 700,000 laborers decades to build housing, palaces, treasures, and even rivers of mercury. To simulate the empire the emperor controlled in life. From the very beginning, archaeologists linked the Terracotta army to this mausoleum, labeling it a defensive funerary god for the afterlife of the first emperor. This alignment made perfect sense. No ruler, before Huang, had the wealth, authority, or ambition to command a project of this scale. The Qin state, rising through Shang Yang's legalist reforms, only reached unchallenged dominance under Huang. Earlier, Qin rulers, even powerful ones, lacked the resources to create an underground army of nearly 10,000 figures. Queen Dowager Xuan died in 265 BCE, roughly 55 years before the main construction of the Terracotta army began. The timeline alone creates a massive logical barrier for anyone claiming she was the patron. But the Xuan theory, popularized in recent years by books and television, refuses to fade. Its supporters put forward a series of provocative claims that have captured public imagination. First, they argue the distance between the Terracotta army pits and Huang central tomb mound, roughly 1.5 kilometers, is too great for a standard funerary accessory. They claim such a distant placement breaks all known rules of Qin royal burial layout. Second, they point to details on the warriors themselves. Many wear asymmetrical topknots called crooked buns, which they link to Chu cultural customs, matching Queen Dowager Xuan's Chu heritage. They note that early excavations revealed colored pigments on the warriors' robes, not the solid black Qin emperors famously favored. Third, they cite inconsistencies in chariot wheel widths. Huang's standardized axle width law is not reflected in the army's chariots, which show varying measurements. Fourth, and most sensationally, they claim a character carved on one warrior's body is not a single logogram for spleen, as archaeologists identified, but 2 separate characters, Mi and Yue, the personal name of Queen Dowager Xuan. Finally, they question why Sima Qian never explicitly mentions the Terracotta army in his detailed account of Huang Mausoleum, calling this silence a fatal flaw in the traditional narrative. These talking points spread rapidly online, turning a niche academic disagreement into a viral historical debate. But to judge this fairly, we must move beyond catchy soundbites and examine the hard, physical evidence that forms the backbone of modern archaeology. The single most devastating piece of evidence confirming the Huang dating comes from bronze weapons found inside the Terracotta army pits. Over 24 spears, dagger axes, and swords bear clear inscriptions. 3rd year Prime Minister Lv Buwei. Lv Buwei was the chief minister of Qin exclusively during the early reign of Huang, serving until 235 BCE. These inscriptions are not later additions, not random markings, but official imperial manufacturing marks, legally required under Qin law, to hold craftsmen accountable. This is not circumstantial evidence, it is a timestamp, carved in metal, placing the weapons, and thus the army they equipped firmly in the Qin Shi Huang era. Queen Dowager Xuan died decades before Lv Buwei held power. It is logistically impossible for weapons made under his authority to belong to her tomb. To accept the Xuan theory, one must believe these inscribed weapons were somehow placed into a pre-existing Xuan-era army, a claim no credible archaeologist endorses. A second critical piece of proof comes from official Qin government markings on tools and vehicle parts. Multiple chariot fittings and weapons bear the logogram Sigong, an imperial workshop established in the second year of Qin Shi Huang's reign to produce arms and ceremonial equipment for the throne. This administrative label did not exist during Queen Dowager Xuan's lifetime. The entire bureaucratic system that created Sigong products was a later Qin innovation directly tied to Qin Shi Huang centralization reforms. The material culture of the pits is inseparable from the institutional structure of Qin Shi Huang's empire. We must also address the geographical and architectural context. Queen Dowager Xuan was buried in the Qin Dongling Cemetery, located on the southern slope of Lishan Mountain, kilometers away from the Terracotta Army site. The Terracotta Army lies within the clearly defined outer boundary of Qin Shi Huang Mausoleum complex, a boundary confirmed by decades of remote sensing ground, penetrating radar, and trench excavation. The entire complex was planned as a single, unified, cosmic city for the emperor's afterlife, with multiple satellite pits holding acrobats, musicians, bronze birds, and military guards, all matching the Terracotta Army's role as the military wing of this underworld court. The 1.5-kilometer distance is not irregular. It is part of a deliberate spatial design that mirrors the imperial capital's layout, where military barracks stood outside the main palace district. The too-far argument collapses under the full mapping of the mausoleum complex. What of the cultural details, the crooked Chu style, top knots, and colored robes? Modern archaeology has resolved these points completely. The Qin army, by Qin Shi Huang's time, was a multi-ethnic force drawn from all conquered states, including Chu. Soldiers from different regions retained traditional hairstyles within the imperial military structure, so the top knots reflect troop diversity, not royal patronage. As for colored robes, Qin Shi Huang, official color of empire, was black for state ceremonies, but military uniforms in active service used practical, varied pigments for visibility and rank distinction. The dyes match military attire of the period, not a queen's personal taste. The wheel width argument also falls apart. Qin Shi Huang standard axle reform was enacted after the unification of 221 BCE, while large sections of the Terracotta Army were built before unification. The construction timeline spans both pre- and post-unification periods, explaining minor variations in chariot design. The idea that every single chariot must match a later reform is a basic misunderstanding of the project-long construction window. The most dramatic claim, the Mi-Yue carving, has been thoroughly debunked by paleographers. The character in question is a single logogram pi, meaning spleen, a common marking used by craftsmen to note body position or production batch. Splitting it into two separate characters is a forced, unscientific reading that ignores standard Qin script structure. No leading paleographer accepts this interpretation. It is a textual distortion, created to support a predetermined conclusion. As for Sima Qian's silence, the records of the grand historian describes Qin Shi Huang Mausoleum as holding palaces, scenic towers, and 100 administrative offices, a broad description that easily includes the Terracotta Army as part of the military guard. Sima Qian did not list every single artifact. He summarized the tomb's cosmic grandeur. His silence is not evidence of absence. We must also consider the raw power required to build such a monument. Queen Dowager Xuan ruled as a regent for King Zhaxiang, but her power was shared with nobility and military clans. She never commanded the absolute centralized authority Qin Shi Huang wielded after unification. The Terracotta Army demanded a dictator-level control over labor materials and industry control no Qin ruler before Qin Shi Huang possessed. Sima Qian's account of 700,000 laborers conscripted for the mausoleum aligns perfectly with the scale of the Terracotta Army. No record, archaeological or textual, suggests any project approaching this size was ever attempted under Queen Dowager Xuan. Mainstream academia across the globe has reached a unanimous verdict: the Terracotta Army is an integral funerary component of Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. Leading institutions, including the Shanxi Academy of Archaeology, the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, UNESCO's World Heritage Committee, and every major Western university, specializing in Chinese history, reject the Queen Dowager Xuan theory as a fringe evidence-poor claim. UNESCO's 1987 World Heritage inscription explicitly lists the Terracotta Army as part of the mausoleum of the first Qin emperor, a decision based on a full review of all archaeological data. The debate persists, not because the evidence is split, but because the Xuan narrative is more dramatic, more suited for viral entertainment than dry academic proof. This mystery teaches us a vital lesson about history. Popular narratives often outrun facts, especially when amplified by media and social media. The Terracotta Army is not a forgotten monument to a forgotten queen. It is the ultimate expression of Qin Shi Huang, ego, ambition, and vision. It is a physical manifestation of his belief that his power would transcend death, that he would rule in the afterlife as he ruled in life, with an invincible army at his back. Every warrior, every chariot, every weapon is a testament to the birth of the Chinese Empire, a project so bold it still astonishes the world over 2,000 years later. We have walked through timelines, inscriptions, geography, material, culture, and state power. We have tested every claim of the alternative theory against peer-reviewed science and primary sources. The conclusion is not a matter of opinion. It is a matter of historical fact. The Terracotta Army was built by Qin Shi Huang for Qin Shi Huang. Queen Dowager Xuan was a remarkable ruler in her own right, a woman who shaped Qin's rise to power, but she was not the patron of this underground army. Her legacy stands firm, without being attached to a monument that belongs to a later, more powerful emperor. If you enjoyed this journey into ancient China, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more epic history. See you next time.